Another issue that we often encounter is, in a lot of the Asian countries, it's very difficult to access the equity requirements because, venture capital culture in Asia is not that advanced. So oftentimes you have to go to Singapore, you have to go to Hong Kong, and the ticket sizes of these regional investors are quite high, and sometimes are beyond the reach of, a single energy access project. So Sandeep is going to talk about an aggregation model to sort of clump together these smaller projects to enable them to access regional investment. So Sandeep?
Sure. Thanks, Webb. It's no secret that we need financing to scale solar. I mean, all of us in this room know that. And I'm not a finance guy. I don't know why you put me on this channel because I'm an engineer. So bear with me. This is how I understood the problem. We have a 25-year-old asset. That's the asset life of solar, right? And we're trying to sell it sometimes direct, which is like paying for your home in cash. Or you'll be lucky if you can get a 3-year loan. So it's like, you're trying to compress that 25-year-old asset into to be paid off in 3 years. So of course it's going to be expensive, right? Now, I look at the housing market, and I think one of the reasons it booms is because there's mortgage financing available. Sometimes get to even the craziness of subprime lending. I hope we don't get there with solar, but the point is the same. It's like, how do we get those financing, those sort of financing available at a long-term, same long terms as you would get for, let's say, a mortgage? So there's a famous quote by Mr. Jiwanacharya from last year, right? It's impressive. He says, look, money's not the problem. Connecting money to investment-ready projects is the problem, right? And all the project developers in the room were like, what, how could he say that? I mean, what do you mean? We have projects and this and that. But the money's there, apparently. So how do we bridge the gap, right? So we asked the question, what is an investment-ready project? What is a quality project? And why are investors having a hard time? We also spoke to investors. And turns out, at least in our experience, that investors' big issue is that they're going and looking at these projects, just like they would at any other project, and looking at, are these projects investment-ready? Meaning, what is the risk profile of that project, right? And these projects, like the ones we developed, for example, our company, Gamma Power, works in Nepal. We develop microgrids and productive end-use projects and so forth. And the ticket size is, even though we're not doing lanterns or solar home systems and going up to our more like microgrids, but even the ticket size is as low as $2,000, and on the higher side, maybe $100,000 to $200,000. Still very small. When you talk to an investor who is in Europe or even like in a city somewhere in Asia, they're like, well, I have to go to Nepal, and not only to Kathmandu, I have to travel on a 10-hour Jeep ride to this remote village to understand the risk profile of this project. Well, that project turns out to be a $50,000 project. You're going to spend more money than that just going to that village. So the math doesn't work out. So not only the projects have to be investment ready, but the ticket size also has to be something that makes sense to make that due diligence cost work. So when we heard that quote, and and not just me, there were other project developers in the room, Stuart Crane, there was folks from Selco, and there was Maragon Power's Brian Shaw. All of us are doing work in field, and this is the exact problem we run into. So over beers, we had this dialogue, sort of a loose consortium being formed, saying, guys, why can't we pool our projects? I mean, Sandeep, you have like 4 or 5 megawatts worth of pipeline in Nepal, and Maragon Power has some, and Stuart's got some, and all these guys, and Rustam from Boone has some, and why can't we pool our projects? Well, because they don't look alike. We don't follow any standards. So how do we develop these standards? What is the standard? How do we as developers implement the standards so the projects can be collapsed? And more importantly, how can we cut the cost of due diligence? So for an investor looking at these projects, a lot of the information that they would otherwise have to travel to that remote village in Nepal, you actually have it somewhere. And it's not PDF or documents or things like that. It has to be more interactive. It has to be real, something you can play with. And that's where this concept that you see on the screen that we're calling Off-Grid Bazaar at the moment was born. Now mind you, this is a product in closed beta. As you can see, this is fresh screenshots as of this morning. And so I was trying to get my USB drive out there. But this is a concept, basically it's a portal. And what you see here is a map, and on the map you see all the projects that GAM Power has developed today, because we are the only ones who've been uploading projects there. Our hope is that we can get other developers, the same guys we drank beer with, and perhaps some more, can upload their projects as well, so they can be represented in this form. So here you see basically, and anybody can go to the site, any investor, and we're all going to promote it. And you can just basically see that, okay, in Nepal there happen to be 91 projects worth 1.8 megawatts that have been uploaded. The actual size is actually 5 megawatts, we haven't gotten there, but that's just one company. Now there's many other GAM powers out there, and there's many other countries where this work is being done. So our goal is to have some sort of representation like this. You can go to a website and kind of look at the projects, where they're located. You can click on a fund. So we're pooling these projects into a fund. So here I clicked on a fund called Productive End Use, so it kind of shows you some high-level fund details, like how big is it, what's the size, what's the impact metrics, and also some of the sample projects that make up that fund, so you can look at the project details. And this is, anybody can go check out this information. Now, if you're an investor and you want to learn more without having to travel to these exotic locations, then you basically sign up as an investor of the site. Identify yourself. When you sign up as an investor, instead of looking at the circles, you can actually see pinpointed map markers, each representing an off-grid project developed by a certified developer who follows very strict standards on how these projects are developed. What do I mean by standards? There's a technology standard. What kind of panel do you use? What kind of batteries do you use? How thick is the wire? Down to that level of detail, so the technology risk is quantified. There are financial, finance structuring standards. How much money do you raise from the local community? How much equity? How much debt? What's the operational cash flow? All that stuff. And then there's also operational standards. What is the project timeline? How do you do the commissioning process? So to an investor, a lot of the information is available up front without having to travel, and we hope that that's going to cut down the due diligence costs. So you can say, hey, I'm going to look at the fund details, see this all Excel, magic there, and you can say I'm interested in this project before having to burn a lot of money in due diligence. Now, this is how far we've gotten. We have plans where once a project is funded, we can show how the project is progressing. So project plans, timelines, etc. And once the project is operational, show the monitoring data, like how much energy is being produced, how much energy is being consumed, actual versus expected, how much billing has been done, how much collection has been done, so all that sort of details. So as an investor, you have an end-to-end, right? Not only you're interested in the project, but once you actually put money in the project, you can see the project operation on your iPad, on your mobile phone, anywhere. So that's, we want it to be more tangible than PDF documents that people sign. It has to be live, interactive to the moment. That's where we want to go. Like I said, this is in closed beta. We've only gotten to a point where we can now at least upload our projects. We're working with some developers in Cambodia, some in Indonesia. There are other developers in the room. I'd love to talk to you, see how we can get your projects up here. And really, I see this as more of a cooperative movement, so the developers are getting together. Hey, just like an open source project, we're going to subscribe to certain standards when we develop microgrids or productive end use projects or certain off-grid projects that can be standardized. And then that'll allow us to pull it, and we can just show it to all the investors that we're talking to. So that off-grid market is not this amorphous blob, but it's actually quantifiable, something you can see online and interact with. And after you invest, you can monitor each project at a much granular level. So that's how we're thinking about this problem. But at the end of the day, this is an attempt. We're open to feedback. I think this is going to get refined over time as we talk to more investors and project developers. But the key is the same. In order to sort of go to Jiwan's mantra that money is not the problem, connecting money to the investment-ready projects is the problem, aggregation function is a must, and somehow we need to make it happen. Like I said, this is our attempt. By no means I'm saying this is the answer, but open to feedback, suggestions, and your questions.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay. Thank you, Sandeep. One question I have is, let's say this platform becomes successful over time, and you will eventually have an accumulation of standards for different types of businesses, right? And let's say I'm a new startup entrepreneur. I have no idea what these standards are. Will these standards be open sourced? I mean, I'm really interested in that angle.
Yes, of course. I think open source, past life I used to run open source projects, and that's where that idea comes from. But open source is a great idea to crowdsource the validity of an idea and make it real robust, right? Anybody can come up with an idea, but getting it accepted by your peers in the market is really hard. And what open source does is basically says, look, I don't know anything, but this is the best I know. And I'm open to feedback. As you provide feedback to it, and the community sort of manage that process to say, yes, these are standards we can actually implement, it refines in a very organic fashion. But since everybody's involved in that refining process, the adoption is almost automatic. So, think about when you use open source software, right? You know that there's hundreds, thousands of people who've looked at it, commented on it, and refined it and accepted it actually. So to a new entrepreneur coming in, it'll be the same thing. Hey, this standard is not just this, crazy Nepali guy, putting his standards. He actually put something out there, and there's 10 other commentators, and they all are in the renewable energy field. They all do off-grid business. They all have stories to tell over beer, and they have, that's where it comes from. So there's not only there's a sense of confidence about going there, and if you don't like it, you can always provide your feedback saying, this particular standard needs to be changed because it's counter to what I see in the field. And I think that's very important to keep that. And of course, no illusions. We'll all find ways to make money off this when the projects are funded, right? But without the projects get funded, you can't. The aggregation side of the development side is really hard, unless you're being able to pool our resources and energies.
Great, thank you. For those of you who don't know, Sandeep's company, Gampower, was one of the 10 deals we closed. And in his past life, he's a Silicon Valley entrepreneur. So, when he talks about web development, he's pretty credible. Okay.